Well, thank you all for coming, especially to our panelists, but for all of you students for taking time out of your day to do something that's actually very valuable for you. I talked to a few students earlier who had presentations in their classes tonight, so shame on those professors who required presentations tonight, or I think we would have had an even larger turnout. The way this works, if you haven't been to one of these before, is I'm going to introduce everybody at the panel. That's a little bit of a different change, rather than you introducing yourself. Because I want to make time for questions rather than long introductions, so I'm going to be very quick about that. I'm going to ask a few questions just to kind of get the ball rolling, so to speak. Do you know that American? No. To get things going, okay. And then I'm going to encourage students to ask questions that you have. Those are typically the best questions we get. Before we start, I already had one question tonight, and it encouraged me to sort of make this announcement. There are two people who aren't here tonight who have been part of this event, I think, ever since it started 6 years ago. Esteban Lopez and Zelma Echevarria. And unfortunately, there's a sad reason why they're not here tonight. Zelma passed away last year after a battle with cancer, I believe. And Esteban and his two young children have moved back to South America, where there is family. So we miss them, and I've been in touch with Esteban about this event, and he was happy to hear that we were having it again, and sorry that he couldn't join us, but I think we certainly all understand. So he and his children and his family are in our thoughts tonight. And they are here in spirit, including Selma. So, to get started, starting at this end of the table, Mary Wambui, who is originally from Kenya, received her master's degree in international economic development in 2005, is an asset manager, a very brand new job, I believe, with Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corporation in Dorchester, Mass. June Chen, or Chen June, that's right, depends on what country we're in, okay? From the People's Republic of China, received her MBA and MS in Organizational Leadership in 2008, is a business analyst in the Office of the Registrar right here on the SNHU campus. Andrea Pruna, where's my notes? Originally from Colombia, received her MBA in 2006 and certificates in marketing and international business, is the vice president of marketing at Northeast Credit Union in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, right on the coast. Paulson Edom, originally from Nigeria, graduated in 2012 with his MBA and with his bachelor's degree in environment and ethics and public policy in 2010. He is the Market Development and Multimedia Communications Manager, gets a prize for the longest job title, at Boyle Energy Services and Technology right here in Manchester. Lin Li, also from the People's Republic of China, received her master's degree in Project and Operations Management last year and her bachelor's degree in Business Administration in 2010. She is the Executive Vice President of Tracy Communications right here in Manchester. And last, and most definitely not least, Cheng Li from the People's Republic of China received her MS in Accounting in 2009, and she is a project coordinator and international accountant for Wheelabrator Technologies in Hampton, New Hampshire. Okay, I'm almost out of saliva at this point. So let me start by asking each of you to respond to this question fairly briefly but fully. How did you get your first job after graduating? What did you do and what were the resources? How did it happen for you? And anyone can start who feels like starting.
I just started. You know I got a job from you, right? I graduated from 2008, and before I graduated, I started working on my resume in January, 6 months before I graduated. As I was looking for an internship, and I talked to one of my professors, and I said, if I can do some internship opportunity, and then he said, well, you have to get a job description first. At the time, I worked for one of the office on campus. It's not exist anymore. It's called CED. And he said that job is not gonna give you enough experience for start internship. So as I talked to him and started working on resume, and I had an appointment with him, and then he said, oh, actually, Bill has an opportunity for you for United Way, located in Manchester. They're looking for internship. And I said, oh, great. So I contact their vice president and see if I can get an interview. And she said, oh, great. And so we had a couple interviews, and then she said, you can start it. So I started my internship there for 3 months, and they hired me for another 3 months as an OPT. Maybe you all know what this OPT is. And that was just a temporary job. And I worked there, and then I was applying other jobs as well. And they are not planning to hire me. And I said, okay, that's fine. One of the girls working in the office, she resigned the job. And then I heard of the opportunity. I said, oh, okay, maybe I can fit the position. So I applied the job, and they hired me. That's how I got my job.
And you are currently working at Southern New Hampshire University, so you've had 2 positions since
Yes.
you graduated.
Yes, this
Okay.
is my second job.
And you must currently be here under an H-1B visa?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm making these points known because it may relate to questions that you have later on, and you may want to address questions at certain panelists based on what your interests are. Okay? Who's next?
I'll go next. I actually started working in the company I'm working now before I graduated, before I got my MBA. After my senior year, when I was in my senior year, my undergrad, I was thinking about possibly going back home after I got on my program, or staying in America and getting a job. And I used to attend all the career events, all these Alumni Panel, I used to attend it. Job fairs, all the networking, both on and off campus. I used to attend, apply for jobs, looking for jobs, and I wasn't successful. Chance Clotter, his assistant, his former assistant, was actually the one that gave me the lead. I was in class one day, one of my evening classes, and he sent me an email saying that he spoke to an employer in Concord who was interested in hiring international students, and he gave me his contact information and encouraged me to contact him. I utilized the career development office because my resume wasn't good enough, so I went to them. Chance Clutter and Bill Jenkins helped me polish my resume, helped me write a cover letter, and I sent that to my boss. And I sent it to him while I was in class one day, and he got back to me 20 minutes later. He said he wants to interview me for the job. He was interested. I said, yeah. So he came. He actually interviewed me on campus at the old cafeteria. He sat there. He told me at the time, my company is a global company. We're an energy services company. We do commission power plants. And I'm from Nigeria. We have a lot of oil and gas. At the time, he was looking into going into Nigeria to do work. So it was kind of like divine appointment, sort of. It was kind of like a blessing. So he said, actually, I'm thinking about going to your country to do work. I'd like to hire you to be my right-hand guy. I was like, well, it doesn't work that way. I'm an international student. I can't just accept a job offer like that. I have to follow due process. Since I'm a U.S. citizen, I need to get OPT and work authorization. So through the help of Don Cerudo and Deborah Donali, the ISS office, they helped me out, and I took one additional class to my program as an internship to start the position. So I started as an intern, as executive assistant to the CEO, worked with him directly, and 2 months into working there, he said, I want to keep you long term, so I'm going to apply for you to get a H-1B visa. So I started working there, and I utilized these 2 departments very well, and I encourage you guys to do as well. They're very helpful to me, and my company had sponsored me, and I got a work visa, and I started working. And when I got my work visa, my job title changed from executive assistant to market development and multimedia communications manager. Why? It's a 2-in-1 job in the sense that the skills that I had during my undergraduate, I worked for the audiovisual department on campus. I learned some skills there. Also, I took a grad assistant position at the COCE, the marketing and communications. So the little experience that I gained there, I used it in my current position. I'm like, oh, we don't need to hire someone else. We can, put you there. You can do the market development. Market development, what I do is, I research markets in different countries. We're doing work in Africa, South America, the Middle East, Asia. We're trying to get into Asia, and Europe and America, North America. So what I do is I research different markets and then advise my senior management on which markets to penetrate, to do business in. So that's part of it. Then the multimedia communications, what I do is press releases, marketing communications. I manage our website and also manage the social media space. So that's why I got my job, and so far I love it.
And I like all of your stories. This particular story appeals to me because it was the international background that probably landed this job. So you guys do bring something to the table that domestic students aren't going to bring to the table, and the right company and the right time and the right position, that international background can really work to your benefit. And the other piece I like about this, and this is true of many of you at the table, is that H-1Bs present themselves when you prove yourself. So when you start and you have an OPT opportunity, if you make yourself indispensable, if you make yourself valuable to that company, H-1B opportunities can follow. Okay? So great. Thank you, Paulson.
Let me go second. Third, because you talked about the international background. So I graduated in 2005 in international economic development. My background before I came to this country was microfinance and entrepreneurship. And so I finished school here. I had my OPT card and I applied for a job. I prayed. I knew what I needed to, I knew what field I wanted to go in. So I wasn't just looking for any job. I knew that I wanted to alleviate poverty. So I directly knew what I wanted to do. And I Googled for such kind of a job. And so a job popped up, and I applied for it, and I got it.
There's nothing to it.
Google it.
And now I'm on my second job. That was like, I worked in that job for almost 7 years, and now I have another job, and pretty much the same. Like he said, it's, if you have something to offer America, then there are opportunities for you to stay. It's not just staying because you really want to stay, it's staying to add value.
And the piece of this story that I like the best is I knew what I wanted to do, okay? Whether you're a domestic student or an international student, if you don't know what you want to do, it's very hard to find it, okay? You need to figure out what it is you want to do. If you're having trouble with that, there are people who will help you with it, including us. But knowing what you want makes things happen. What a great story.
I'll go next. My story, the first thing I did when I got here as a student was to get a job on campus, because I knew from back home in Colombia, it was all about networking and who you knew. I mean, I'm not sure how it is in your countries, but in Latin America, it's all about who you know and making connections. So I got a job, and again, it starts to the same point, is like providing value. So you get to make networking. People know what your work ethic is, what a good worker you are, if you're dedicated, and it all starts building up. So I got jobs, I started networking. I would come to all these different events that the university offered, volunteering to any events, and that's how I got my job. I volunteered for the commencement address. I don't know what year it was, probably 98 or 99. I volunteered. They were looking for students to just help lead people into the building, and I met the director of alumni, former director of alumni, Mike DeBlasi. We just started talking just about networking and introducing yourself and talking, and he said, I know someone. I said, I want to do marketing. I'm six months away from graduation, and it happened to be by chance that the president of the alumni that had just been elected was looking for a marketing person, and that's how I got my job. And I think to your point is providing value to that company you get. Whenever you get that first job, go above and beyond and prove to them that you are worth that H-1 visa, because it isn't expensive. Some companies, they just don't want to deal with, they're scared of the visa process, of undergoing, it's going to be a cost. There's a lot of negative, feedback out there about immigration and legal immigration, and they start getting very confused about it. So if you prove yourself what a valuable employee you are, and I know that international students bring a lot to many companies, then they will, I mean, they'll be more than happy to do that. H-1 visa for you. And I did all the visas from A to Z, F, H, all of them. I had them all. And I'm lucky now that I'm very honored to be a U.S. citizen. So, good luck.
One of these days, someone will land people on the planet of Mars. And when they do, they'll find that in order to get a job on Mars, you need to network. It is the same in every country I talk to. I think it's even more important in other countries than it is in the United States. And 80% of jobs in this country are gotten through some form of networking. International students often want to sort of whine to me that we are not from America, so we can't network. Well, don't tell that to Andrea. Okay. Talk with her before you leave tonight if you're not sure how to go about networking effectively.
And try to get away from your, like, I know we used to cluster, all the Latinos used to cluster together, and the parties of the Latinos, and everyone clusters, and there were the Asians and the Indian parties, and everyone had I mean, we would go to the different parties, but it's just trying to get away from just being with the people you know, getting to know other people, because everyone knows someone, and it's good multiculturally for you to expand your horizon, especially now in a global economy.
Okay, I guess I'll start next. I definitely can't agree more with Bill and Andrea about the values that you provide to the companies, and also the job opportunity comes along with it. And I also, before I mention anything about that, I want to also mention a point that is, please don't ignore your fellow students and classmates, that you might think that you're competing with them in a job market, that you don't want to tell them, well, where I'm interning and where I'm going, and because we're competitors and all this stuff. But actually, I think it's one of those things that you're talking to your colleague and talking to your classmates, and you know where they're going, you learn about their story, and you tell them about your story, and it's a way to exchange success stories, what you can learn from them, what they can learn from you, and even eventually it's a win-win situation, because that's exactly what happens to me. I found a company that I'm currently working for through a classmate that I used to know, and she interned for that company for a while, and then I was, in the process of finding an internship. So I asked her what's her information about the company and all this stuff, and she told me, but unfortunately she doesn't want to really to stay here, and her family really liked her to go back to China. So that's how I just kind of wrote a letter to the president of the company and said, well, I heard about you from this student, and I would like to do what she does for you, hopefully more, and providing more values to the company. So there's another thing, because the president see that, oh, you're classmates of one of my former interns, so it builds you a little bit of more connections than you're just a blank face writing a letter to the president. And also, I also want to encourage students that it's one thing that you submit resumes through all of these career sites, but also be more proactive. With all the social media sites out there, that LinkedIn's and Facebook and all this stuff, don't be afraid to go onto LinkedIn, find out who is actually in charge of hiring people, or better yet, going to the president of the company. He or she eventually responsible for hiring people. So don't be afraid to go to that person, write to them directly, tell them what you are good at and what you can do for their company. And that's eventually how I got my job. So, and also by providing values to the company. And when I first got in, I mean, the president said, well, I don't really want to give you a responsibility list, and this is what you should do, and that's it. That's all you need to do. I want you to really, I don't want you to have a moment sitting alone at your table and asking me what I should do today. So you just go out, figure out yourself, see what's going on with the company, and see where you can add values. And eventually, I think eventually I got to secure my positions at the company when I brought in sales, and from a lot of the clients and brought in the company, actually contributing to the bottom lines of the company. And so eventually, when the president decides that you are truly offering value, and that's how you're going to stay in the company. So that's what I have to say.
Well, as you can see, Lynn is a very shy person. My favorite part of that story is I wrote the company president and introduced myself and told her who I knew and what I could do for the company. I can't get domestic students to be that proactive, but that is the way you find things. If you wait passively for those advertisements of jobs that you can find on the internet or other places and expect that they're going to come to you and ask you to add value to their company, you're going to be sitting there waiting for a long time. Proactivity. And we're about to hear a similar story, I think.
Yeah, well, my story can make lots of points we just mentioned. One is an international student, you can bring the value. How I got my job is through network surprise. I know this director of talent in Villabrator through a friend of mine. And he said, well, he's the director of talent in the company, why don't you just meet him? That was about 6 months before I graduated, but I started to look for a job about a year before I graduated. No luck, I got interviews, but either I don't like them or they don't like me. So, and then I met this guy, and then we met in the diner by the airport. And then I showed him some work I did in school because I didn't have any experience before. And then we just talked, and there's this like, okay, it's nice, I'll keep my eye open for you, send anything. And then a month passed, didn't hear anything, there's no job opening. I searched the website for the company, nothing. I sent him email, just say, hey, just say I'm still available, any job, let me know. And I've been doing this about 3 more times, because for the next about 3-4 months. And then about 3 months before I graduated, he called me. He said, hey, I know it's a short notice, we have this deal with China. We have our Chinese guests coming over. Do you mind translating for us? I said, well, I was thinking, not really my major. My major is in accounting, never trained professionally for translation. So since I speak 2 languages and I can do them a favor, maybe just get my foot to the door myself. And then I did. I went over there and they interviewed me, and they said, okay, we can start next week. And then I went there to start work, and surprise, the guest was not there. And because something, they canceled the trip and they feel bad for me. They say, is there anything we can do for you? I say, yeah, internship. That would be nice. Yeah. So that's how I got my internship. Like what Bill said, you need to give them a chance to value you. So I worked in HR for about 3 months. I did lots of translation. I did work for accounting, for HR, for engineer, pretty much everybody. And then by the time I need H-1B visa, they say, yeah, not a problem, we'll do that for you. So the same thing we've been telling everybody. Another story I think Bill wants me to tell you is networking. I've been working in Villabrator for 3.5 years. And I'm thinking, maybe it's time for me to change up and see what's out there, what I can do out there. And just recently, talking about LinkedIn, I saw this job opening in Chelmsford. So, and say, okay, that's about what I do, and I'll apply it. And I did. And LinkedIn has a special feature. You can connect to the people that you don't know through the people you do know. So this international controller is connected to one of my network. And then I talked to her and said, hey, could you connect me to him? I'm looking for this job in the company. And she said, yeah, not a problem, and I'm a good friend of him, talking about small world. And then she did send an email to him and say, Jing used to work with me, and I loved her. And he came back to me, accept the invitation, say, yeah, I'll interview her, see where it goes, I might contact you. So.
Okay. How many of you have a LinkedIn account? Okay. That's not enough hands. Okay. It's about what we get from American students, too. LinkedIn is really a valuable tool, and we're seeing heads, almost all the heads up front nodding about that. That's just the most recent example I've heard of that tool being helpful. And that doesn't mean you put all your eggs into the LinkedIn basket and you don't do these other things. But LinkedIn is one aspect of networking that facilitates that process. So just a great example of that. I'm going to ask one other question and then see what questions the students have. Okay. If you could give one and only one piece of advice to these students about what they should do between now and the time they graduate in order to help their prospects for employment, what would that one piece of advice be? And you've touched on some things now, so if you have another piece of advice that you haven't already expressed, then please share that with them.
I would say networking. I got my first job through my professor that I got networking from Bill and United Way, and the second job is actually from networking as well. So I work for United Way. I have a lot of connection with the local companies. So I know a lot of CEOs and a lot of higher top executives in Manchester, New Hampshire. I actually know Paul before I worked for United Way, but I didn't. I wasn't afraid of to send him an email saying that I may need another opportunity. Do you wanna have some interview for me? And then he is really happy to send me an email and then saying that there are a lot of job opening in our company, school. So I applied a few jobs and then got a few interviews, and then these jobs really fit for me because I work for database and when I work for United Way, and then they hire me. And also I want to add another piece of advice about working. I tell you, I work for United Way. I have to go to the company by 4 o'clock in the morning to get a lot of events set up, and no one want to go. I said I will go. And at the time I was internship, and I go all the summer event, the fall event, get up 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the company, pick up the car, and set up all the event. And when the position was open, I was the first one they considered to hire because they know how hard I work.
She made herself indispensable. The entire story of that networking, and I don't know if you remember this or if you knew this part about it. I contacted
Maria Godinez?
No, this is your faculty.
Jim Faberger.
Yeah, that's right, Jim Freiberger. When I found out that United Way was looking for an intern, so I knew that Jim had, who was a faculty member at that time, had some prior involvement with helping to find students for these internships. So I contacted him, and he thought of June. Okay, and why did he think of June? That's right, because she was outstanding as a student. So she made herself valuable and known to him, so that when I reached out to him, he reached out to her. We're back to United Way. President LeBlanc was the chair of United Way, and so that brings her back to SNHU. That is what networking is, all of those different kinds of tendrils that work out there. So it started with being a very good student and being outstanding to one of her professors. That's why you have the job you have today, because of that. Correct. Okay, very cool. Okay, who else?
I'll go. My piece of advice would be find a mentor, someone that would lead you and will guide you and will answer all the questions you have. Hopefully someone that has either been in the United States for a long time and understands the culture and has worked in the United States or an American. But that person can help you and guide you, and you might have questions about how do I dress for my first day on the job, how do I dress up for the interview. It's just someone that will help you work with those goals and those dreams that you have, and how do you better yourself to be that.
I'll go next. As an international student, I would encourage you guys to utilize the ISS office and also the career development office, because they were very helpful to me, very, very helpful. We've talked about networking, we've talked about being hardworking. The other thing too is not enough for you to just send a resume and sit down and expect a phone call. Be proactive. You send a resume, you don't hear back from them. The next week, follow up with an email or with a friendly reminder. For me, my boss offered me the job the first day he met me, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to take it. But then when I sent him my resume, he's a busy guy, he travels a lot. He never got back to me for weeks, and I was kind of like worried. I kept sending him emails, kept calling him. And actually, the first day he hired me, he shook hands with me and told me, thank you very much for being so persevering. So one other thing I want to advise you guys, be persistent. Be persistent. It's not enough for you to just send out your resume and just sit back and relax. Be proactive. Take some other steps, Be persistent. Send emails. follow up, phone calls and all that stuff. And the other thing too, I know we talked about working hard and showing your value in the company. U.S. employers, I mean, everybody else mentioned this. They know, and international students, they know we have work ethic. From different background that we come from, we know how to work hard very well. We don't take opportunities lightly. When you go into a company, show your value. Show your value. I can't emphasize that enough. You have to show your value. For me, I mean, I dress up like this and I still vacuum, I take a trash out and do stuff like that. You might think no one is noticing, but people do notice. They do notice. So it's very important to, show your value, work hard, persevere a lot.
People always notice, okay? Internships in particular are wonderful opportunities to get noticed. And don't think that everything you do is not being monitored by somebody. That's every good thing and every not so good thing. So it's nice to hear that kind of reinforced.
I would say just sum it up from the people that have been talking, it's really being entrepreneurial, meaning going all the way and trying to, just just kind of really impersonate yourself as a business. How are you going to market it? How are you going to really sell it? I'm sure that probably 80% of the people sitting right here are business major. You learn about, strategic management. You learn about marketing. You learn about the 4 Ps and all this stuff. But really position yourself as a business you want to market and be entrepreneurial. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and just, go all out and figure out unconventional way to make yourself valuable and sell it to the business. And of course, I think also another point is that a lot of the students started off a job from internship, and from all the colleagues here that we've been discussing is that don't take yourself too seriously and roll up your sleeves and do a good job. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, my advice would be just be proactive, just follow up, because things don't always just jump in front of you. You have to really keep trying, and like what you said, you just keep asking them, do you have a job, do you have a job? Then when they do have one, you would be the person that jumped in their head. That's how I got mine. If I don't keep contacting the HR, they would never remember me. So just have your face in front of them.
I had the pleasure of working with Jing when she was looking for these opportunities, and the way I remember her is as a pleasant pest. Pleasant, persistent, never take no for an answer until no is given. She kept knocking on the door and knocking on the door and knocking on the door. And that worked for you. It worked for you, where you just kept persisting. I used to be a little bit more on the side of don't make yourself a pest. I think you changed my mind. Okay? Be pleasant, be professional. There are a lot of P's in these, a lot of P things. But be a pest. What's the worst that can happen? They say no. If you don't persist, nothing happens at all, so you've lost nothing. So be persistent. Employers, by and large, really respect that. It's like, wow, she must really want to work for us. So finally, it works. So good for both of you.
So my comments, my advice, I don't know if it's advice or this is just, I'm just going to share from my own, this is how I view life. And if I was in your shoes, I would search my heart out. It's not enough to get a job, just a job because you want a job. It's not enough to stay in this country just because you want to stay in this country. So I would take time and ask myself a few hard questions, like, who am I? What do I really want? Where am I going? And then from that perspective, then you can begin to chart, your way forward, the jobs you're going to apply. And at the same time, don't be limited to the fact that you just need to be employed. I do other things. I have a nonprofit. I mentor young people in Lowell, Massachusetts. And I started doing that when I was still a student. So it's not just, you can't be limited. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't limit yourself. There are opportunities beyond just being employed by someone. And those little things that you begin to do on your own, whether they pay or they don't, build who you become at the end. And that's what makes you attractive. It's really who you are. So that's all I can say.
Thank you. I think maybe the Roman Catholics elected the wrong pope. Mary inspires us every year that she comes back. And that message can't be said enough. You need to follow your hearts, but you need to know what your heart is, and you need to work to follow your heart. It's not enough to have a dream or to have an idea. You need to go after that. You need to be proactive about it, and we've heard that from everybody. Okay, enough with my questions. What questions do you have for the panelists? You can either address it to the entire panel, or you can address your questions to individual panelists. Who wants to be first? Now, last year we had some really good questions, so you have a tough act to follow.
Don't be nervous, we don't bite.
Okay. Yes, sir. And then you.
Hi, my name is Maro, and I came here last September and planning to graduate in December. And I'm currently looking for an opportunity to work on an internship or OPT after graduating from this college. And I wanted everybody, like, why did you choose SNHU, and what do you think was the strengths in this school after you graduate? That was, yeah, the question I wanted.
That's a great question.
That's a great question, actually. I'll go first, if I may. Actually, I did not choose SNHU. I think God designed it for me to be here at SNHU. Because I was back home in Nigeria playing soccer in dirt, no grass, and this soccer coach, the former soccer coach of the school, coaches, it's a routine. Coaches go all over the world to scout for players and recruit players to bring to America. That's how I got here. I was playing soccer back in Nigeria in the dirt, and the coach, the former coach of the school came here, came to Nigeria, and with three of us got our first full scholarship to come to Southern New Hampshire and go to school and play soccer. The other two guys, they could not come. I was the only one that came here. I think, again, I owe it to God. It's God's work, because we all had the same, same paperwork, same I-94, I-20 forms, everything was the same. But I went to, for the visa interview, those of us from developing countries, we know how hard it is to get visas to come to U.S. The other two guys, they got denied visa 2 or 3 times. I went there, my interview was 3 minutes long, and I got offered scholarship to come here. And it was tough when I first came here, stepping outside your comfort zone. The first couple of months was rough, missing family, adjusting to the weather, the food, and all of that. But overall, I thought it was the best thing that's happened to me. Being here, the thing I liked most about SNHU was the fact that where I come from, education was very hard, in the sense that in a class of 200 people, there was no projector, there's no microphone. You have to be there 15, 20 minutes early to sit in the first row, and you want to pay attention in class. Here I am, small class, 15, 20 students. There's projectors, there's everything. Student-teacher relationship, very, very strong. So, some of my American friends that complain how school is so hard in America, I'm like, you guys don't know what hard is. You don't know what difficult it is. Because here you have all the tools to succeed. The teacher-student relationship is good. Faculty, everyone is willing to help. So, what I really liked most about the school, apart from athletics, which was a very big part of my life, was the relationship I built. I was very, very involved in the school, involved in the ISS, different clubs and organizations, and just serve. That was one of the things that stood out for me. So, thank you so much.
Anybody else want to respond to that?
I agree with Paulson. I think the one of the biggest advantage of SNHU is really the relationship that you have with the community here. I've been to UNH. It's a great campus. It's a lot bigger than SNHU, but you just feel that you're just a number in the classroom, not really a person. But in here, the professors and all of the students around you are very friendly, and you feel like you're actually a person that you can actually reach out to people and talking to them and learning from their stories. So it's a good thing that you're in a small community, so you can feel that you have a lot to offer. So.
If I may add, even if the school was bad and you're good, you'll go somewhere. But this is a great school. but this is a great school. So.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I come here for, I don't know how many of you have major of accounting, because SNHU started as accounting school. I come there for one of the reasons, and New Hampshire, I like the state. Another thing is, SNHU is definitely getting more popular. It's not because of commercials. It's more very part of that. Another is the students, alumni. I do have lots of colleagues graduate from Southern New Hampshire. A lot more than I thought, because we're talking, say, oh, you graduate from there too. Actually, I have lots of colleagues going to school right now. So it's definitely now start to become the go-to school now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a good service as I work for register office, and then our goal is provide the best service for the students.
I would agree with everyone. This school has a great reputation, and it's just people networking, back to networking. Oh, you went to SNHU. Oh, I went there too. It's just everyone has, it all lands here. A lot of them used to go to New Hampshire College, but it all.
In the nonprofit world, actually, the school that used to be here and is no longer here, the School of Community Economic Development, is very well known. That's why I have the job that I do. And I mean, it's beyond the fact that the school was, that section is no longer here, but the fame still goes on.
And that is still available online, as it turns out, so that's helpful. And there, the young lady behind you had her hand up.
I'm actually an English teacher here, and I teach international students, and all the time my students say to me, oh, Jennifer, I'm so scared to talk to Americans because my English, and I know their English is very good, so I'm like, why are you afraid, you know? You don't need to be afraid. So I'm just wondering, for some people may have that same idea. So were you guys worried at all about your English skills being a barrier to your getting a good job? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I wasn't worried. I was not worried at all. In fact, I've discovered that as long as you have something to offer, people will really struggle to hear what you have to say.
I was worried. I was worried because my first job, I work for United Way. Part of my position is you have to speak in the presentation in front of like hundreds of people. Sometimes can be manufacturing, sometimes can be all banker or lawyers, different crowd. I was so nervous to speak, especially I think Americans has a public speaking problem as well, right?
Yeah.
So I did a lot of training, so the United Way provide really good training for public speaking, and then I got a little bit comfortable with speaking English. And I actually didn't mind, because I'm second language anyway, right?
I've seen surveys, I think, that say that most people are actually more afraid of public speaking than death. Okay. So I think it's universal, not just for international students. Anybody else? I think that's a great question that does address a lot of the audience.
That's a great question, because I think my advice to the international students, the first thing you want to find a job, practice your English. It's very, very important. I know it can be scary lots of times, but I have to say Americans are really forgiving. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just do whatever you can say. A couple words, they will get it. So do your best and talk to people. You'll have fun.
Yeah, and like Andrea said before, when international students come here, they're always clustered together. The Asians, the Asians, the Latinos, the Latinos. Just don't be afraid to go out of your own, social circles and talk to Americans.
To add to that, actually, that's a very good point. For me, my accent was very thick, and my English teacher had a hard time understanding what I had to say. She gave me an advice that sustained me throughout. She said, make friends with Americans. I actually had an American roommate almost throughout my college when I lived here. Because I found that living with an American and being friends with them, speaking with them, helped me a lot in pronunciation, picking up a different accent. So that's one of the advice I'll give to you guys. Be friends with Americans, talk to them a lot, and you'll improve your English.
And we've recently started at the Learning Center We have English labs, or English language labs. And that's new. I think Tim DiMatteo has been trying to get that for years, and finally, I think we just started last semester. And so those are other opportunities for you to develop your language skills. And the more demand that we place on that, the more resources we're likely to get. So I want you to flood that opportunity if that's something that you think would benefit you. Okay? And the language, I see you often at the end of your academic careers when you're looking for work, and how do people get hired? Interviews. So at the very minimum, the interviewer must be able to understand what you're saying. And I rarely find students at that point in their careers whose vocabulary is limited, who cannot express themselves in English, but I find many students whose accents I cannot understand. So it's the accents that need work. And that's where the language labs, I think, can come in handy, and also making American friends and asking those American friends to correct your pronunciation and persist. We'll do it if you ask us to. Otherwise, we would think we were rude if we corrected your pronunciation. So you need to ask us.
And if I can add to that, is when you are at that in the interview, even if you feel that you have a strong accent, just believe in yourself. Forget the accent, forget that English is your second language. Believe in yourself and the value that you're bringing to the organization, because you know once you land that job, you'll go above and beyond, like you've heard for the colleagues. You can do that job. Believe in yourself and be sure that, show them that if they hire you, forget your accent, you'll work on it at night, you'll watch American TV, everything. Just believe in yourself and you can work on your accent, but don't let that be a detriment to landing that job.
A little side thing, people are actually learning Swahili from me, so. I mean, I'm serious, so, like she said, you know, it's
And they're fascinated by accents. I mean,
yeah.
they start speaking to me in Spanish, and it's 2 or 3 words, and I just go on, and people actually are interested in your culture.
That's very true, because my boss tried to imitate my accent all the time at work. Yeah, yeah he does.
So it's not
They really
all
like,
that
yeah.
bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Okay, great question. Thank you. And I think you had a question.
Okay. You say you just introduced how you get your first job. So I'm asking how you feel when you start your first job.
Very nervous. Very excited getting that first job, and it's just learning the culture, learning I think you were great. I mean, that first job, you do everything. It's making the coffee, throwing out the trash. I mean, no matter what position you have, you want to make sure like everyone notices what you do. It's just going above and beyond and making friends. Don't sit at your cubicle and just like in your lunchtime, don't have lunch at your cubicle. Go out and go to the cafeteria where everyone's sitting down. Try to make friends and network again with the people in the organization.
Something about my first job. So I said that my background was economic development, specifically in microfinance. So when I was here taking classes, there was an elective in affordable housing. It was an American affordable housing class. I didn't want to take it because I thought I was going back to Kenya, but I took it anyway. So the job that I got was in housing. So I didn't have any background in affordable housing law in this country, but I got the job anyway. So that first job was very, very tough because I had to learn very fast. The only thing that kept me there was because I have a passion for economic development, and if people are going to get out of poverty because I learned housing law, I'll do it. So that's, just wanted to share that.
Mine for me was kind of interesting because when I first started, I was supposed to be the boss's right-hand guy, no experience whatsoever in the industry, and he took me along. He was my mentor. Every Monday, you know, he did a drill, like an exercise for me to learn. I was nervous when I started, but he made me feel very comfortable because he cared. So he was very passionate about having me on board. He made me feel very comfortable. It's like he told me point blank. It's like even engineers with years of experience, once they come into this company, they're going to take about 24 to 36 months to adapt. So you're fresh out of college, you're not even done college yet. So don't be, like she said, don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn. It's part of the learning process. Ask questions. I was very nervous, so every time I go to him, I ask questions. And I felt like I was being a pest, going all the time to ask questions, but he encouraged me. He goes, no, you're new, ask questions. And like she said too, always network within the company as well. It's one thing to get a job, it's another thing to keep the job. Try to form some allies in the company, friends and all that stuff, so because it goes a long way to help you as well.
I couldn't agree with you more, so I have nothing else to say.
My first one was my intern, and I never had any experience before. And then I worked for 3 months. I feel like it's been a long time because I worked for lots of departments. Like you said, work with other people. I got to know everybody. HR, finance, engineer, got to know the company. And one part I did in intern is, like you're talking about talking in public. One thing is I give presentation on Chinese culture, American culture, and they're probably half the office attend those meetings. I give lots of presentations. I even did it was Houston through conference call, and I'm just excited about telling people the Chinese culture. And then I like looking at people's face when they're surprised to hear about some fascinating facts. So I got my speech out. I got to talk to people, and then they realize, okay, she can bring something to our table. She can tell us something we don't know. So I think that's a great part, and that's how I think they see my value and got to move to the next page.
Other questions?
I'm not 100% sure how the OPT process works, but when you have a job with OPT, at the end of it, do you approach the employer and say, well, hey, my OPT card is going to expire. Are you going to sponsor me, or do you sit around and wait for them to come to you with that?
That's a very good question. Very good question. Let me use my own experience. Okay, so I did not have OPT yet. The ISS office helped me. I added another course to my program I think it's CPT. It's an internship. I used that to get my foot in the door in the company. So I started working there, and even before I started working, I explained to my boss the whole situation. I told him, I'm not a US citizen. This is a process that I have to follow. I can start as an intern, or I can wait and be done and go straight to OPT. You know, I was comfortable with my boss to tell him that some people don't have that kind of relationship with their bosses, because it's kind of like a sensitive topic, if you will, because some companies, you haven't even worked in the company yet, you haven't proved yourself yet, you're already thinking about me sponsoring you for that. So you have to be strategic in how you approach that. For me, I already told him before what the process was. So I got I can't remember how many OPTs.
Right, you're doing some, they're like during your vacation.
Yeah.
You can apply for pre-completion OPT, so he did one at least of those. He did some pre-completion part-time while he was
some part-time, full-time,
school,
yeah. So they were flexible with me. They understood the process beforehand. So even before it was time for my H-1B, they already applied for it. So I think I still have my OPT when I got my H-1B, so I didn't need OPT again. So it depends on the kind of relationship you have with your boss. It's specific, relative to different people.
If you're going for an interview, in this day and age, when immigration is such a hot issue, they will know that you're on OPT. Mm-hmm. There's no two-way about it, because you'll be asked for the document that you want, whatever employment validation document that you have. It's an OPT document. So they do know that if they're going to hire you, you will be interested in that process. So I don't see, there's no room for lack of full disclosure.
I think to add to that, like when you go to that interview, just make sure you know what you want and how the process works, because in my case, I was educating them. Even HR didn't know what it was all about. Like I had to come and educate them and bring them the documents and pull out the law. I knew that IRS website, not the IRS, the immigration, left and right. I know where to click, where to find that document. I was all over that website, but you have to know how the law works, what they need, what the costs are for the attorney, what the costs are for the application, everything. Have everything documented. Because if they start asking you questions, like, there's no, like, you don't want to say, oh, I don't know, because then they get nervous.
Right.
Especially with immigration being such a hot topic. Just be
Yeah, just to
prepared
add-
and know.
sorry, just to add to that real quick, I was the first international person my company hired, so they were not used to the immigration process. So I had to educate them, and they helped me out a lot. So that resource is a very good resource to use. They're gonna help you out, and the lawyer, the John Wilson, he's the immigration lawyer for my company right now, because I kind of hooked them up with my company. So
Me too,
that's a
actually, my
very good
company the
resource to
same.
use. Yeah.
So right, in that connection, we have 4 times a year, we have this Working in the USA workshop. So the next one will be coming up on April 11th. And we alternate between 2 law firms that come in. So the first half hour of this workshop is always me talking about OPT, but the next hour and a half then is somebody from one of the law firms talking about your options after OPT, like the H-1B, L-1s, permanent residency, all of that. So do keep your eyes open for those.
Well, and as time is beginning to wind down a little bit, did anyone else want to respond to how do you approach that transition as OPT is drawing to a close? How do you broach the H-1B subject? Yes.
Well, what I did is just by the end of my intern, I just went to my supervisor and asked, how did I do? And then usually they say, you did a good job and people like you. And they say, okay, good. So next. That's how we got to the next step.
So let me tell you what you need to do for me.
I did approach my supervisor as well. I know that was 6 months position only every year. So I did my 3 months OPT, 3 months CPT. And by end of the OPT, and meanwhile applying other positions as well, like all over the places. So I talked to my supervisor. I said, is that a possibility that you're gonna hire me? And then she was honest with me. She said, we only like 10 people organization, we're nonprofit. I don't think there's any room for any additional position. So I said, good, it's good talk that you know what's the end and what know you're gonna do the next. So I was applying another job, and then, but the girl just left and was in that position, so I applied that position.
Go ahead, Mary.
For me, like I said, I prayed, I got the job. I also prayed and asked that my employer would bring my H-1B stuff on my desk. That's what happened.
Okay. I think it's like any other relationship. What I've heard consistently here is make yourself valuable. If you make yourself valuable to an employer, they will want you as much or more as you want them. And once you've made yourself valuable, this conversation is not difficult, okay? They're going to welcome the conversation as much as you are. They may need to be educated. If they're a small firm, they've not worked with international students before, so know every click on the site and know how to, it's not a complicated process to apply for and receive H-1B. It's actually pretty straightforward. You hire an immigration lawyer and you have them do all the work for you. The company just has to be willing to pay a few $1,000s to do it, okay? So it's really actually quite simple. The point is, when do you bring it up, and you'll know when that time is there because the relationship will be established. You'll know that you're valued. If you're not sure, just do what Jane does. So how did I do? Am I doing pretty good? Okay, well then, this is what you do for me. Yeah, Deb.
I just want to add one thing because you had mentioned graduating in December, so I didn't want to talk to you. So please try to avoid graduating in December if you are thinking that you would like to work beyond OPT, because the timing, without going into it, the timing just does not work out well for a year of OPT and the timing of H-1Bs. So talk with your academic advisors and try to avoid graduating in December.
And then something else, I work for a nonprofit, and nonprofits do not have that cap. So,
Okay, that's great, good point. Another advantage for working for nonprofits.
Well, if you have to graduate in December, which I did, but because I started my intern before I graduated, so I have a little bit more time. Yes.
You'd already built your credibility with your employer. I want to respect our panelists' time, and we are at 7 o'clock, which is what we agreed to. If any of them are able to stay and talk with you afterwards, that would be wonderful. But we thank you very much for coming, and we'd like to do that.